Good morning. Today we're going to talk about the Toothpickase activity that was done in the lab here at school. For the virtual learners, this would be helpful just to get some information about what we talked about. First of all, you're asked to graph the data using what we've come up with from the lab. And then afterwards, answer the conclusion questions. Now, you had two options. Option A was to graph the data using paper and pencil. So use three different colors to represent the three different conditions that are represented by the lab. Normal conditions, competitive inhibitor, denaturation. The next option, option B, was to be able to use the Google Sheets to do your graphing. And this is where I'm going to explain how you can get that set up. So using the virtual data that's already provided for you from the activity that Mr. Corwin, Ms. Moy, and Ms. Kiskade put together, they actually decided that they were going to get together and perform the Toothpickase lab to see what kind of data they would get, being able to compare that data to what the students were able to get from the same activity. So if you know anything about enzymes, their property is to be able to speed up a reaction, especially in your digestive system. So the idea here is that we had an activity called toothpickase, an enzyme that primarily breaks up toothpicks. Now, it doesn't really exist, but this is just a demo to allow you to understand the properties of how enzymes work. So using your data, we go to our Google applications, click on Sheets, add an additional sheet. For our title, we're going to put Toothpickase Lab Graph. For our first column, going back to our data chart, you can see our first column says time. When it's going to be plotted on the graph, it will represent our x-axis, so time. And our times were 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60 seconds. Be sure to put the unit here. So we're going to put seconds in parentheses. Our next column, now notice looking at our data chart, there's three types of data represented. The first is the enzyme working under normal conditions, so that's this data right here. Our second is the enzyme working in tandem with a competitive inhibitor, and that's this data right here. And our third one is denaturation. It's when the enzyme is affected by temperature or a change in pH. Maybe it's too acidic or too basic inside the human body. And that's this data right here. So we have to actually create three columns. We're going to use the titles from each of these sections for the three columns. So going back to my graph, the first one was normal conditions. Make sure you capitalize each of the titles. The next column was competitive inhibitor. And our third column is going to be, let me click out of that, third column is going to be our denaturation of the enzyme itself. All right, now I can go ahead and insert the data that was provided for me from the actual demonstration from the three teachers I mentioned before. So for our first column, we're going to put 0, 1, 4, 6, 9, 11, 13. Excuse me, sorry, wrong data. Let's go back up to the top here. The first column is under normal conditions. It's going to be 0, 4, 9, 14, 19, 20, And for a total, after 60 seconds, all 20 toothpicks were broken by the enzyme Toothpickase. So we're going to go back to our chart. We're going to put our data in. At 0 seconds, 0 toothpicks were broken. At 10, 4 toothpicks were broken, so on and so on. Right, for our next column, now we can take the data that I was jumping to earlier. It's this one right here. This is a competitive enzyme. This is an enzyme, a competitive inhibitor that affects an enzyme. In this case, it binds to the toothpickase, making it difficult for the toothpickase to do its job, breaking up the plain toothpicks. So our data here is 0, 1, 4, 6, 9, 11, 13. Going back, we're going to put 0 at 0 seconds. 1, 4, 6, 9, 11, and 13. Our next column is denaturation. So going back to our data chart, denaturation is when the enzyme is changed drastically by the pH or a change in the temperature inside the human body. So looking at our data, 0, 1, 2, 4, 5, 8, and 10 toothpicks were broken when those conditions were changed. All right, so here we have our data. Go ahead and click in the the left corner and drag your cursor all the way to the bottom of the last cell with data in it. So down to the data chart where it says 10. Now we're going to go ahead and insert. We're going to choose charts, and here's our graph. And as you can see, kind of messing things up here. I'm going to click on the chart itself, maybe. I'm going to drag it over here so it's not covering up my data. Now, a couple of things in the lab that it said that if you chose the route to use Google Spreadsheets, a couple of things you needed to include was your title. So you had to put the title. The x-axis, which we just mentioned, was the time. The y-axis, which we mentioned, was the number of toothpicks broken. And then, of course, our key, which is normal conditions, competitive inhibitor, and denature by temperature and pH. So we have a little bit of changing to do around here. So clicking on our title up here, we're going to actually move the graph over here. We'll move it back. So clicking on our data, delete that. So we're going to put change. Change affects enzyme activity. I want to make sure I have everything I needed to put in there correctly. All right, good to go. Now notice over here on our y-axis, there's no title. So we need to make sure we get a title. If you click back anywhere in this space, you'll get the editor that'll pop back up. Over here where it says chart axis titles, click the Y, which is a vertical axis title. For that title, we're going to put number of toothpicks broken. Okay? And we're going to click over here somewhere off to the side to see if our data populates. All right, looks good. Now we're not completely done. We need to go ahead and copy and paste our data. So to do that, click anywhere on our data chart. We're going to click Control C. We're going to go back to our lab. And somewhere after all this information, we're going to go ahead and paste it. So there's my pasting. You can see the data chart's already listed there. After I'm finished, I'm going to go ahead and answer the remaining conclusion questions and then get everything ready to submit to my teacher. Hope all this helps. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your teachers. Have a great day.